Hello and welcome to this video on this detailing of this Mark Cavendish Dolan precursor track bike. Straight off from the start, we're using WD Bike's cleaning solution, which we just leave on the frame to allow it to loosen up all the debris that's on this frame. There's a lot of spider mess on it. Next up, we're using a brush after about 10 minutes, which we work into the frame, getting it nice and wet with water to wash down the bike and to start bringing off the mud and debris. As you can see, we're working that brush in. We pay particular attention to welds and down the frame. This bike was reportedly one of Mark Cavendish's training frames from 2006. I purchased it from a chap called James Curry in February 2017. He in turn purchased it from a chap called Rob Hayes, who was apparently well connected in the cycling industry and brought quite a lot of Mark Cavendish's old bikes and frames and things, including his Pinarello Grail from the year he was at Sky, and his Quickstep Venge spare bike that was set up for him a couple of years he was there. And James and Rob were personal friends from their university days on the south coast, and that's how we ended up with this bike belonging to Mark Cavendish. So we're still working in the brush here, cleaning off all the mud. We always use a fairly, not particularly soft brush, but a brush that won't scratch the frame. And this bike is a satin finish, so we don't want to scratch it too much. We want to make it nice. So you can see the debris moving off the frame on the logos. And well, obviously being a black frame, we can't see it too well, but the entire frame is quite dirty. Working down the forks, just paying a little bit of attention to the bearing seat. And the seat post. Obviously, if this bike was built up, we would probably strip this down before detailing the frame, so this would really be at the point where we got all the groups set off. But in the case of this particular frame, we've never actually built it up since we've owned it. We just have had it on display. So now we're wiping down that initial wash and clean. We always use fibre towels. They're softer and they absorb moisture quite nicely, so they're perfect, better than rags. Microfiber towels, I should have said. Give that little logo, the famous name, a wipe. Next up, we're using T-cut on this frame. There's one or two marks on it, especially on the logos. The logos are discoloured slightly, so we're just using T-cut to work that frame. It's a little bit of a grey area really when you're talking about a matte or satin finish, because obviously the more you polish it, the shinier it's going to become, but we ended up with a nice satin finish on this frame afterwards, and we're quite pleased with it. Obviously when you watch car detailing videos, they'll use electric polishers and such like. We tend not to use it on bike frames because obviously they're a much smaller area, so you can really do it by eye with your fingers as a detailer would in door shuts and such like on a car. There's no need to have fancy gadgets to do these things. It just, you know, it's such a small area, a bike frame. As long as you've got plenty of patience, you can really bring them up nicely. So we work that T-cut in all over the frame. You can actually see on that D the way that cleans up. Now the seat stay. And again, we're using microfiber towels at all times. This is probably the longest process of detailing a bike frame. You've got to really spend some time working that in and just getting that nicely cut back. Next up we buff that off. And being cyclists ourselves, you might have noticed on my cheek there I've got a bit of a red mark. That's from a crash I had 6 weeks ago. So now we're cleaning off the T-cut, and the frame, you can see, is already beginning to look an awful lot nicer. You can see that satin finish really beginning to stand out. Right, now we're on to the polish. I like to use Auto Glim car polish for bikes. It's just a cracking polish really. It's easy to work, and it leaves the bike with a lovely surface on it that when it gets wet you really see the water sitting on that surface, which again, if you're polishing a mountain bike or a road bike that you're using out in all weathers, it really does protect that paint and makes it far easier to clean the bike down between rides as well. Yeah, Auto Glim is absolutely a top polish. It's a little bit pricey, but you don't use a lot on a bike. We actually use this polish on all our services as well. We never cut corners on this one. It is a cracking finish on a bike. Again, microfiber towels at all times. We have changed the towel as well, so it's a fresh towel for fresh polish, so we don't get any more T-cut on the bike, and we'll use a fresh one to polish it off. Again, with the quality of this polish, it actually works quite fast, you know, although this is sped up, it really does polish nice. So we're working that top tube, you can really see the satin finish coming through there. You know, it's hard to believe that this frame is 2006 and this is recorded in 2021. You know, that bike almost looks as good as new. You know, you've got a few blemishes on the frame, which is to be expected, but the actual paint itself now is coming up like new. I dare say Mark Cavendish himself would be quite impressed with this. We do offer this service at Bike Speeds. We'll, you know, strip a bike right down to the frame and clean it, clean all the components, and the bike will come back as clean as we can possibly get it. When we do that, we do fit all new cables, you know, so the bike is serviced at the same time, so the bike will come back as good as possible. This is the final stage we use. This is a silicone detailer spray. It's a little bit controversial, but especially for a bike like this that is a display bike, it does stop any sort of spider mess or cobwebs or dust from really sticking to that frame. It's just it gives a lovely finish to a bike, this does. Now with this I actually use a standard duster, because it soaks it back up without taking it completely off the bike. A microfiber towel would probably almost wipe this right off, and you do want just a little bit of that film left, that little bit of protection. Yeah, this is like our final stage of a clean. I don't always use this on carbon fibre, it really depends on the finish of the frame. I don't tend to, where there's a gel coat type finish, I tend not to use this, because I don't know, just I tend to leave that plain. But on alloys and this sort of type of finish, this is just the thing that makes that bike pop out afterwards. So there we have the Mark Cavendish, beautiful Dolan precursor with the Alpina forks, and that's ready to be built up, maybe someday in the future. We may make that as another video.